He had survived war, but not loneliness, until a stray cat walked out of the rubble and into his broken heart. In the middle of gunfire and grief, a hardened soldier found a tiny companion who refused to leave his side. What started as a silent stare across a battlefield turned into a bond that would carry them both through the darkest nights. This isn't just a story about a cat. It's a story about healing, hope, and the quiet kind of love that saves lives. Whispers in the wind. The wind blew cold across the barren hills of the war-torn village, carrying with it the scent of smoke, dust, and memories that refused to die. Corporal Ryan Walker tightened the scarf around his neck, not for warmth, but for comfort, something to ground him as he trudged through the ruins of yet another forgotten place. His boots sank into the soft ash of collapsed homes, and his fingers, though gloved, felt brittle from holding his rifle too long. There was no sound but the crunch of rubble beneath his feet and the occasional crack of distant gunfire that no longer startled him. He was alone. No squad, no radio chatter, no laughter over cold meals or sarcastic jokes to make the night easier. Just orders to clear this area, alone, while the rest of his unit held the perimeter. He didn't mind the silence anymore. In fact, he preferred it. But silence has a way of revealing things we're not ready to face. As he passed the skeleton of what might have once been a bakery, walls blackened and the scent of scorched flour still faintly in the air, he heard it. A soft, broken sound, a whimper, a cry. He stopped, holding his breath, ears sharpening. There it was again, a meow, faint, weak, like the soul behind it was giving up. Ryan turned slowly, his eyes scanning the rubble. He stepped carefully toward a collapsed wooden beam, then lowered himself to one knee. And there it was. A small, dirt-covered kitten, no bigger than a soldier's canteen, huddled beneath the wreckage. Its fur was patchy, and one of its eyes seemed nearly swollen shut. But it was alive, breathing, staring at him, not with fear, but with something far worse, hopelessness. Ryan blinked. He hadn't cried in years. Not through boot camp, not when he lost friends, not even when letters from home stopped coming, but something in that fragile little thing staring at him with all its brokenness cracked him open in places he thought were long sealed. "Hey," he whispered, setting his rifle aside and reaching out slowly. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The kitten didn't move. It didn't run. It just looked at him like it had nothing left to lose. Ryan lifted a piece of wood carefully, inch by inch, until he could slide the kitten out. Its body was trembling, more from fear and cold than strength. Gently, he took off one glove and wrapped the kitten in it, holding it close to his chest. "You're just like me," he murmured, his voice thick. "Stuck in a place you didn't ask to be. Trying to survive something you didn't start." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The kitten lay curled against his heartbeat, and the soldier, tough, trained and hardened, sat on the edge of a ruined world, cradling something so fragile it reminded him that he was still human. In that moment, the war faded, the ruins blurred, the noise quieted. It was just a man and a stray soul who found each other in the silence, and neither of them would ever be alone again. A purr amidst the gunfire, they told him not to get attached. "Out here, attachments get you killed," Sergeant Miller once warned. "You learn to let go. You bury your feelings with the bodies you pass on the way back to base." But that tiny creature, curled up in Ryan's vest, didn't know anything about war. It didn't know about missions, orders, or the rules of survival. It only knew warmth, and that somehow, for the first time in a long while, it had found some. Ryan named her Whiskers, not because she had prominent ones, most had been singed in the fire, but because it reminded him of home, of his sister's cat, of lazy Sunday mornings with cartoons and cereal, of a time before the desert, before the bullets. She stayed hidden in his chest pocket as he moved from ruin to ruin, a living secret tucked under his flak vest. He'd sneak scraps from his MREs, tiny bits of beef jerky, rehydrated meat, even crackers soaked in water, and she'd nibble them from his palm, her tiny tongue soft as a breath. At night, when the air turned bitter and lonely, she'd curl up against his neck, purring so gently, He could almost believe he was somewhere else. And then the days blurred. War didn't stop just because a soldier found something to care about. The shelling returned with fury one morning, a surprise attack on the outer checkpoint. Ryan had just stepped outside the shelter, Whiskers wrapped in a makeshift sling under his coat, when the ground beneath him shook. The sky cracked open, dust swallowed the sun. "Incoming!" someone screamed. Ryan dropped, shielding the bundle under, his coat with his body. The boom rang through his skull, but he didn't let go. His ears rang, dirt filled his mouth, and sharp metal rained from above. But he didn't move until the silence returned. When he finally sat up, coughing and dazed, Whiskers peeked out of the sling, still alive, eyes wide. Tiny paws clutching his shirt. He exhaled in disbelief. "You little idiot," he whispered, voice cracking. "You should have run. Why didn't you run?" She meowed softly in reply, not in fear, not in pain, but in something oddly familiar. Faith. That night, after the dust had settled and the medics cleared the wounded, Ryan sat alone on a half-destroyed wall. Whiskers was in his lap, licking his fingers as he tried to write a letter. But the words didn't come easily, so instead he wrote, "Dear Mum, I found a cat. Or maybe she found me. Her name's Whiskers. She doesn't say much, but she's got a way of making the noise stop, if only for a little while. You'd like her. She's got a stubborn streak, a soft heart, and she purrs like an old engine trying its best to keep running. Funny how the smallest things can keep you going when everything else tells you to give up. Love, Ryan." As the moon rose and lit the broken village in silver, Ryan held her close and whispered, "You're my reason now, Whiskers." And from the depths of a world built on destruction, a bond was born, not of necessity but of choice, of love, of survival. Together, they made the darkness feel just a little less cruel. Letters from home, eyes full of hope. Days turned into weeks and the war didn't stop. It never did. But something had changed in Ryan. The other soldiers began to notice first. "Walker, you smiling? Or you just caught a bug in your teeth?" joked Private Morales, handing over a packet of powdered coffee. "Swear you've been different since that furball showed up." Ryan didn't deny it. How could he? Whiskers had become more than a companion. She was a symbol of something he had forgotten. Hope. In a place where buildings crumbled and people vanished, she remained, curled up on his chest, purring through the sound of artillery fire. She had no past he could ask about, no language to speak, but she understood him in ways no one else could. The daily letters home were now a ritual. "Dear Mom," he'd write, crouched by the dim light of a cracked lantern in the shelter's corner, Whiskers purring softly beside him. "Whiskers almost tripped a colonel today. I swear she walks like she owns the place. Reminds me of you." Or, "Dear Sarah, remember when we built that cardboard box house for your kitten? I think I've got the real-life version here. She's got more attitude than both of us put together." Each letter held something he hadn't let himself feel. In months. Laughter, warmth, life. And one day, weeks after mailing the first, an envelope arrived. A return letter from his mother. Ryan sat still for a long time before opening it. His hands trembled. He hadn't received mail in months. Not since his father passed away back home. Not since he shut the world out with a thick wall of silence. "My sweet boy," I cried reading your letters. Not because they made me sad, but because they reminded me that your heart is still beating. Not just with life, but with love. Whiskers sounds like a miracle, a soft one, but a miracle just the same. I can't wait to meet her. I hope you bring her home with you. Keep writing, keep surviving. You're not alone, even when it feels like it. All my love, Mum." Ryan folded the letter slowly, carefully. Then he picked Whiskers up, held her close, and whispered, "You hear that? You've got a fan club back." "Home." She blinked, yawned, and curled back into his lap like she belonged there. Because she did. That night, the shelling returned. Loud, angry, merciless. But Ryan didn't flinch the way he used to. He stayed low, shielded her with his arms, and spoke to her the way his mother used to speak to him when thunder rolled over their house in the mountains. "It's just noise, girl," he said softly, heart pounding. "We got something." "Louder in here." He tapped his chest, over his heart, over hers. The next morning, he pinned his mother's letter above his cot. Right next to a new photo someone had taken of him holding Whiskers, a rare smile on his face. The two looked like survivors of something bigger than war. Like two souls who had collided in a broken place, only to build something whole. A soldier. A cat. And the growing hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still something beautiful waiting on the other side. The wounds we don't see. The first time Ryan had a panic attack, Whiskers was there. It hit him like a landmine, not the kind that tears through flesh, but the kind that shatters the mind in silence. It was after a long mission. A child had wandered too close to a checkpoint, and the squad had shouted, screamed even, but it was too late. The blast had taken the child. The shrapnel had taken something from Ryan too, something he couldn't explain, couldn't name. That night, his body trembled uncontrollably, and his breaths came in short, sharp gasps. He collapsed on the floor of the shelter, hands clutching his chest as if trying to hold his soul together. He didn't call for help. He didn't want to be seen like that, but Whiskers saw him. She climbed from his cot and pressed her tiny body against his chest, her purring like a hum in the middle of a storm. He felt her paw rest on his wrist, light as air, yet grounding like a lifeline. That was when the tears came. Quiet at first, then harder. Hot, angry, bitter tears that spilled. Out of a place deep inside he didn't know was still alive. "I'm so tired," he whispered. So damn tired. Whiskers didn't move. She just stayed. In the following days, something inside Ryan began to shift. He started seeing things differently. The war hadn't ended, but his perception of what truly mattered began to change. He noticed the old man with the limp who still brought bread to the children in the village, even when there was barely enough for himself. He saw the medic who hummed lullabies while bandaging wounded hands. He saw Private Ellis crying quietly over a photo of his newborn daughter, one he hadn't met yet and wasn't sure he ever would. Pain was everywhere. But so was love. So was survival. So was hope, and Whiskers, tiny, battered, resilient Whiskers, was the heartbeat that reminded Ryan of his own humanity every single day. She had her own wounds. A missing patch of fur on her leg, a crooked tail, the way she flinched at loud footsteps even now. Some things you don't heal from completely. Some scars stay to remind you of the hell you walked through, just like his. But she still loved. She still trusted. She still curled up against his neck each night like the world wasn't on fire around them. And if she could do it, so could he. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the fractured hills, painting the sky in bruised reds and golds, Ryan sat beside a newly arrived recruit, a kid barely out of high school, shaking in his gear, eyes wide with fear. "Does it get easier?" the boy asked. Ryan didn't answer at first. He just reached down, picked up Whiskers from where she slept beside his boot, and placed her gently in the recruit's lap. She meowed once, then settled, curling in a soft circle, like she had done with Ryan so many times before. The boy's breath slowed. His hands stopped shaking. Ryan smiled faintly. "It doesn't get easier," he said quietly, "but you learn to carry it. And sometimes something or someone helps carry you." The boy nodded, and for a moment, the war seemed far away, because in that moment healing had begun, not loud, not grand, but real. The final mission. The orders came through on a cold, grey morning. Ryan's deployment was ending. He had 72 hours before extraction. He sat still for a long time after reading the notice, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. Whiskers, curled up on the corner of his cot, lifted her head and blinked at him. As if she knew, as if she always knew. He swallowed hard. 3 days. After all the chaos, the dust, the death, he was finally going home. He should have felt joy, relief, celebration, but all he felt was fear because Whiskers wasn't on the list. That afternoon, Ryan met with the base commander, a hardened man who had seen too many deployments, too many boys come and go with too many scars. "A cat?" he repeated, raising an eyebrow. "She's more than a cat, sir," Ryan said, trying to keep the desperation from cracking his voice. She's the reason I made it through," the commander sighed. "You know the regulations." "No," Animals on military transports, it's a liability. Ryan's fists clenched. She's not cargo, she's family. Silence. Then the commander softened, just slightly. There's a process. But it takes time, weeks, months, sometimes. You'd have to leave her behind for now. Ryan stepped back like he'd been struck. Leave her? After all, they'd survived together. After she sat beside him through every dark night, every near-death moment, every breakdown, after she reminded him every day that his heart still worked. He walked out of that office with a storm raging inside him. That night, Ryan sat outside the shelter, whiskers in his lap, his forehead resting against hers. I don't know what to do, he whispered, his voice breaking. I can't lose you. Not now. Not after all this. She purred softly, her tiny frame vibrating against his chest like a fragile engine still trying to run. I'll find a way, he promised, tears stinging his eyes. Even if I have to walk you home myself. The next morning, he called in. Every favor he had, wrote emails, made phone calls. He contacted a rescue organization that specialized in wartime animal extractions. He offered to pay every cent of his savings, he begged. And finally, a single word came through, approved. She would be transported, not with him, but on a civilian route. Delayed by weeks, maybe more, but safe if Ryan could let go. On the final day, his bag was packed, his uniform crisp and his chest hollow. Whiskers had been handed over to the rescue team that morning. She cried in the carrier when he walked away, her soft paws reaching through the bars like she didn't understand. And maybe she didn't. Maybe all she knew was that her soldier, the heartbeat she had trusted, was leaving. Ryan stood on the tarmac watching the plane engines spin to life. The wind stung his eyes, or maybe it was something else. Private Morales clapped him on the back. You did good, Walker, Ryan nodded, but his eyes never left the empty space where Whiskers had been. He boarded the plane with a photo in his hand. It was her, curled in, his lap, tail around her paws, eyes closed, safe. Hours later, as the plane soared above the clouds, Ryan leaned against the window, the photo still in his fingers. Hold on, girl, he whispered to the sky. I'm waiting. Because sometimes love means staying, but sometimes it means letting go and trusting that the bond you built will bring you back together, no matter how far. Home is where you're loved. 3 weeks? That's how long Ryan waited. 3 weeks of pacing by windows, checking emails every hour, jumping every time the phone rang. He couldn't sleep. The silence of home was deafening without the soft purr against his chest or the familiar weight curled beside his pillow. His mother tried to comfort him. She'll come, sweetheart. You did the hard part. Now you just have to wait. But waiting was torture. He walked the house like a ghost, unable to settle. He missed the desert dust, the mess hall coffee, even the distant rumble of shelling, because at least there she had been with him. Here it felt like something vital had been left behind. Until the call came, it was late afternoon. The sky had just begun turning the color of peaches and rust. Ryan answered on the first ring. This is Sergeant Ryan Walker. Sergeant, this is Carla from Rescue Wings. Your cat, Whiskers. She's arrived at the local transport facility. She's healthy, responsive, and ready for pickup. Ryan didn't even let her finish. He drove like a man chasing a dream. Heart pounding, hands shaking on the wheel. At the facility, he rushed in, barely managing the required forms. And then a woman in a blue polo stepped out holding a grey carrier. She's been quiet the whole ride, she said, like she knew this wasn't the end of her journey. Ryan dropped to his knees. The woman opened the door, and there she was. Whiskers blinked up at him, confused for a heartbeat. Then her ears twitched, her nose lifted. She leaned forward, then leapt into his arms, purring, pressing into his chest, just like she always had. Ryan held her like he'd never let go again. His tears soaked into her fur. You found me, he whispered, laughing and crying all at once. You made it. Back home, things began to heal. Slowly, like frost melting under a gentle sun. Whiskers took over the house in no time. She slept at the foot of his bed, patrolled the windows and demanded breakfast before dawn. Ryan got help too. He saw a therapist, joined a veteran support group, shared his story, not just about the war, but about the tiny creature who carried him through it. "She saved me," he told the others, "in a place where people forgot how to feel. She reminded me how." Whiskers became somewhat of a local celebrity. The shelter where she first arrived posted her story. Veterans reached out. Families wrote letters. One little girl sent a hand-drawn picture of a soldier and a cat under a rainbow with the words, "Thank you for loving her." Ryan framed it and placed it above the fireplace. Years passed, but some routines never changed. Each morning, Ryan would sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, Whiskers in his lap, the sun rising behind them. The world was quieter now, gentler. He had scars, yes, but he wasn't broken, because he had carried something fragile through the fire, and she had carried him right back. Not all heroes wear medals. Some wear fur, and sometimes salvation comes on four paws with a crooked tail and a heart too big for its body. Ryan once thought war had taken everything, but it gave him Whiskers, and in doing so, it gave him back himself.